systems go. Clear for liftoff.
What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy GS Luke here with our round 2 showdown stream for the Sony Open. Gonna make sure you're ready for all of your exposure Friday. But first off, a look at the weather report. We'll do a little shots gained recap, talk some showdown strategy, some of my top plays, and round it off with a little lineup construction talk to round it off together and give you guys the blueprint out there for Friday. But first off, welcome on in wherever you guys are. Hopefully this golf tournament has treated you nicely so far, whether it's with a few outrights, first round leader bets, any round one showdown exposure. Hopefully you guys had some run good for today and are ready to try and run it back out there for Friday. So first off, I got to go Cole it down there first in the chat. Also, Jay Steele says that he's fast. Yeah, that was well before lock over there at 9:48. So some sweaty tryhards down there in the chat. You always love to see it. And before we go ahead and really dive on in, do want to remind you guys the easiest way to get access to the SHIPIT Nation tools. If you like what you see here throughout the live stream, you want to get access to the stone that we talk about later on, make sure to use code Luke10 over there on the SHIPIT Nation website. There's, of course, a link in the description of this live stream to go out there and check it all out. And if you use that code, you're going to get a discount off any of those memberships, and you're going to help support the channel here as well. So again, we'll talk through some of the tools here throughout the videos. If you like the cut of our jib over here, make sure to check us out over there at the SHIPIT Nation and use that code when you're signing up. But the first thing we're going to go through here are some of the conditions from round number 1 and what we can glean heading into Friday. And the one thing I really noted when looking at the scoring averages is that the PM wave played easier than the morning. With higher winds in the PM, I think a lot of people expected it to play a little bit harder in the afternoon, and especially some of the broadcasters there in ESPN Plus, they were saying that it might play a half a stroke to a stroke harder. But when we take a look at the scoring over here on Data Golf, you can see it's actually 0.1 strokes easier over there in the afternoon wave. So it has started to come back down to earth. At one point, it was actually minus 1.4 in the afternoon. So now it's only minus 1.27 with some play left. It could get even closer to a 50-50 split. But I think most people would have assumed that the morning wave, which had calm conditions for 2 hours this morning, would have played a little bit easier than the afternoon. So if we take a look at the observed weather up here at the top, you'll see what I'm talking about. Right around 9-10 a.m. local time, it did calm down for a few hours, but in the afternoon, it kicked right back up and was pretty consistent for most of the round today. So we'll have to see how the last hour or so of plays pans out. I do have to say that some of the worst players in the field are going to be some of the last few on the course. So maybe we do see this come a little bit closer to a neutral, but heading into Friday, that's an important data point to look at because it's not like the winds died down in the afternoon, and that's why it played easier for a little bit. It was pretty consistent for the entire day. So usually we see the AM wave play a little bit easier than the afternoon, maybe like a 0.2 to a 0.5 shot difference because of the more receptive conditions. But this time around, it played in the opposite direction, which is why it left me a little bit befuddled at first. So let's look at the weather for Friday, get an idea of what to expect for tomorrow, which is going to be pretty windy conditions. Just like round number 1, we've got sustained winds in that 10 to 15 mile an hour range and wind gusts that are close to 20 to even 25 miles an hour. So the first model we have up here is the ECM model for Waialae Country Club. And you can see it here at the bottom, it's in that 12 to 15 mile an hour range the entire day. Same thing with the wind gusts as I mentioned before. GFS model looks a little bit more severe, especially from the sustained gust perspective. Wind gusts, sustained winds on this model are almost identical, but the wind gusts are, they may be a little bit lower than what we had on the other model, but it's going to be blowing extremely steady out there. Icon model looks very similar to ECM. It's in that 12 to 15 mile an hour range in the morning, does kick up to 18 to 20 in the afternoon. So this is maybe the first model that really shows a difference between the morning and the afternoon. These first two are pretty consistent. In fact, if anything, ECM maybe has it slightly worse in the morning hours, but this Icon model, you can see the afternoon wave looks a little bit spicier than what we have in the morning. Media blue looks relatively consistent. Really, the main difference here is that it's a little bit calmer overall. And then finally, this NEM model looks pretty much flat the entire day. So we've got a few models that are telling us maybe the morning is spicier, one that's telling us the afternoon. But what I do know is that with a flat scoring conditions out here for round number one, that I don't think it's going to play to a massive advantage. I mentioned that out there for the main slate on my live stream this week, that I thought there might be a slight edge out there for days 1 and 2, but I didn't think it was going to be enough to go out there in full stack. You can see it was about a 0.1 strokes out here for round number one. Round number two, I'm expecting about the same. Maybe it's 0.1 strokes to the PM wave once again. Maybe it's still the AM guys that get that same kind of advantage. I just don't think it's going to be the kind of edge that you go out there and lock in for every single player. So when we talk about our strategy, our player pool with lineup construction, I just don't think it's the kind of slate, at least based on these weather forecasts that we're looking at. I'll bring up all 5 here at the same time just for easier reference. It looks really, really flat. I mean, if you're going to go in here, you'd have to pick an individual model and then trust it over the others tomorrow. And I just don't have that kind of confidence in one model versus the other. So I'll be playing it pretty flat across the board with my exposure. I don't think that you have to completely ignore stacking out there in your lineups. If you wanted to take a chance on the weather forecast being wrong, that maybe the PM wave gets slightly firmer conditions as that wind bakes out the golf course, then you could stack a few lineups conceivably using morning starters. It doesn't even have to be a full 6-0 stack. It could be even like 4 or 5-1 that you're going with, 4-2 or 5-1 that you're building out there in lineups. I don't think that is out of play, but I just don't think it's the best slate for it. We're going to have plenty here in 2025 where there's a sizable weather edge to go after. I just don't think that Friday at this event is that kind of situation. So, I try to be a realist over here from the weather perspective. I would love to tell you that there's going to be a massive weather edge out there for tomorrow, but I just don't think that's reality out here for Friday. Next up, we're going to go through some of the shots gained metrics over here for round one. So it's still under play. So we're going to be looking at some of the live shots gained metrics, as well as all the guys out there from the morning wave. So we'll talk through maybe some of the ownership trends you'd expect to see with these shots gained metrics, and then maybe some low and diamonds in the rough you might want to keep an eye on as well. Let me get a sip of this and let's keep on going. Still waiting on the -6 from Nick Taylor. He was just shut down after the front 9. Hey, -6 works, and hey, good start for him. That's for damn sure. The slappies offset the wind advantage. Yeah, I see what you're saying, dude. In the morning, there was a guy who shot +11, so maybe it was that. That's a perfectly reasonable assumption, by the way. I know we say that, kind of tongue-in-cheek joking, but you might be onto something there. A +11, a few of those scrubs in the morning could have brought it down that 0.1 shot. What's going on, Michael? He says, what's up, GS Luke? Thank you for the time. Of course, guys. Any questions, by the way, whether it's player pool based, love strategy questions here on the live stream, just feel free to fire ahead at any point, guys, and I'll get to it whenever I see it down there in chat. But what we're going to focus on for the next 10 or 15 minutes here are going to be what we saw in players today. And what we really want to focus on for round 2 showdown is usually how a player hit the ball in round number 1. A lot of people are going to overreact to a player's round 1 performance. And while you ideally want guys who are in solid form, if they weren't doing it in a sustainable fashion, then I'm not all that impressed by a -5, a -6 today. If they went out there, they gained 4 strokes on the greens, and they're a player that's usually kind of sketchy out there with his putting stats, that doesn't impress me whatsoever. If they chipped in 3 times, they gained 2.5, 3.5 strokes around the green, that doesn't really impress me all that much. That is an extremely variant category, and that's something that you usually have to get lucky on to go out there and gain 3-4 strokes. On the other side of that, though, if somebody goes out there and only shoots even par -1, but they gained 3 strokes ball striking, they were off the tee, very efficient, they went out there, they hit a bunch of greens, I'm much more impressed by that sort of performance than what I see over there with the guys gaining around the green with the putter. And your casual DFS fans, and it's gotten better as time has gone on, your casuals, though, just go out there and leaderboard watch. They go out there, they box score watch like you'd see out there in NFL. The guys on a streak out there with getting 100 yards, they're out there betting as a 100-yard touchdown prop, right? Not putting in their actual research. It's gotten a little bit better, as I mentioned. The more and more educated that people become about Showdown, the more and more shows like this, DGen 75 show, of course, was a great resource for educating the community. As you've had more and more of these shows out there, you have people playing some of these ball striking poppers too. So you have people playing the guys that are -5, -6. You're still going to have a lot of chalk towards the top end of the leaderboard. But when we sort sort this by shots gained approach, a few of these guys are going to be popping as well. So I don't think a Paul Peterson is really going to get that much steam. He's a big enough unknown that I don't think a lot of people are going to get there. But like a Tom Hoagie, a Sepp Straka, who are going off in the morning wave, even guys like Sam Stevens, a Denny McCarthy, who will be going off in the PM wave tomorrow, are guys that are probably going to see a 5 to even 7-8% increase in ownership just because of how they hit the ball in round number 1. Now, I still think there's something to that. The most sustainable shots gained metrics from day to day are your approach play and off the tee play, but you have to account for that in your process as well. You know, you'd be crazy not to think that other people are looking at this same kind of shots gained metrics, and that's what you're going to get towards the top end of the board there. Outside of that, though, the other concentrated ownership numbers, you're going to come on your guys that shot -5, -6. So your Harry Halls, your Tom Hoagies, even Eric Cole down here, who some of them didn't even have the best approach days. These kind of guys are going to get steam as well. So an Adam Schenk you throw into that. Ben Griffin made a bunch of birdies. Hadwin, Fishburne, Norlander, pretty much everyone, even down to these -4s. These guys that are T13 are going to get a little bit of extra ownership out there in round 2 showdown. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to completely fade the top end of the board, but what it does mean is that we're going to have to consider that when we get to our lineup construction later on. So we'll talk about the implications when we go after and actually build a few lineups together. But in terms of picking your player pool, you at least want to have that in the back of your mind. What I'm more so looking for, though, guys, are guys that are getting these shots gained ball striking done. So we looked at the approach numbers there a second ago. I do want to also include the off the tee numbers so we can get a really good idea of how guys are hitting the golf ball. You can see Hoagie, Straka still up towards the top end of the list. And JJ Spawn gaining a bunch off the tee as well. And Eric Cole also towards the top end of the list. And then Adam Hadwin gaining almost 3.5 strokes ball striking isn't something that we see all that often from Hadman, but when he's playing his best golf and he's getting into contention, it's because he's hitting a lot of fairways and hitting good wedges. So these are the kind of players that I think should be at least popping out there in your process. If you're looking to build a player pool out there for round 2 showdown, you should at least be considering these kind of players. Now, if they're super mega chalk, let's say that someone here is like 20-25% owned, then maybe you fade them out there in your process. You still got to try and find guys to get under the field on, but if you can find, and I don't have the ownership ran yet, I'll be doing that over there for my Patreon after I do this live stream. The SHIPIT Nation guys are going to have their stuff posted here shortly as well over there on the website. You're going to be able to see some of these ownership numbers after the fact, but if they're reasonably owned, like 10-15%, these guys at the top end of the board, there's a good chance I'm going to be playing them. So I ideally want guys that are hitting the ball well, that have a chance for some putting regression. And speaking of putting regression, let's take a look at some of the poppers with the putter, because these players aren't really going to get steamed up in contests, but these guys that gained a bunch of strokes with the putter could be due for a little bit of negative regression tomorrow. So at the top of that list is Patrick Fishburne, who, by the way, is not a very consistent putter. He's not one of the better shots gained putting players that we have in the field. So him gaining 4 strokes on the greens is a little bit unsustainable. You've got Harry Hall towards the top. He is a good putter, but 3.5 strokes putting is not something we'd expect him to replicate. You got Griot towards the top, a little bit of a sketchy flat stick there too. Same thing with Norlander, Campos, and on. So you have a lot of these guys up there in the top 5 or 6 of shots gained putting that I think you're going to see come back down to earth tomorrow. Now you can see I didn't point out Denny McCarthy for a reason. If there's a guy that's used to gaining and being an elite tier putter, I don't think you have to expect a ton of putting regression from those sort of players. So Denny McCarthy, you know, if he were to go out there and gain 3 strokes putting again, no one's batting an eye at it because he is maybe the best putter that we have in the world. But some of these other guys up here, we have real question marks about when it comes to that putting ability. I would throw question marks around guys like Nick Taylor, even maybe not the most consistent putter when it comes to his PGA Tour stuff, but guys like Brian Harmon, I'm not worried about whatsoever. He can gain a bunch of strokes on the greens. Even a Russell Henley, I don't know if I worry about because he's putted very well around a Waialae Country Club. But a few of these other ball striking heavy players, and you can see a lot of them, by the way, like Fishburne over here. He lost strokes on approach. Griot lost strokes on approach and lost almost 3 strokes out there with his off the tee play. those sort of players I would be a little bit more hesitant about using out there in lineups. They could be going the opposite way with the putter, and if they hit the ball like they did out there for round one, then they could be in for a little bit of trouble. We also want to look at some of the guys that lost a lot of strokes putting, so perhaps guys that could bounce back over there for tomorrow. We got Corey Connors, who's still on the golf course there at -4 shots gained putting. Not the best day, of course, and he is still on the golf course. He can make it even worse. So the kind of player that you'd expect to have at least a slightly better day tomorrow. And you can see he gained off the tee, was okay on approach, so not the best ball striking stats, but even if he's just a neutral out there with the putter, that's a -2 round today, let alone if he goes out there and he gains strokes on the greens, which lately he has been gaining a lot of strokes putting. Just to show you guys his bet the number profile over here. If I look at the last few events for Corey Connors, and we can bring him up here at the top, 7 strokes putting at the Century, lost a little bit at the St. Jude, lost a little bit at the BMW, gained 4 at the Open Championship, did lose at the Travelers, but then gained 3 at the US Open. He has his ups and downs. Like, he's not the most consistent putter, that's for damn sure, but he's been putting a lot better over the last few months. So up there at -4 shots gained putting, perhaps could have a bounce back day. He's going to need it if he's going to go out there and make the cut. Siwoo Kim lost nearly 4 strokes putting too, so perhaps a guy who can make a few more tomorrow. Taylor Pendrith also lost a bunch putting. Benny Ann is towards the bottom of the putting list as well. All these guys, like especially like Pendrith, Benny Ann, Siwoo, even Corey Connors, not the best putters that we have out there on tour. So don't expect them 100% to go out there and have a really good putting day. But when you lose 3-4 strokes on the greens, it's not like the course owes you a few putts to drop, but that's just how stats work, right? That's positive regression right there back to the mean. And these sort of players, I would say, would be prime candidates for that kind of play. I also want to look at around the green. So guys that maybe got a little lucky around the green. JT Poston, I won't complain about, as he's a core play for me this week, also an outright. So he gained 2.6 strokes around the green. He's going to have to figure it out. He cannot do that the rest of the week and expect to shoot -3. So these are the kind of players that you might want to avoid out there for round 2 showdown. So even though I played JT Poston this week, he's maybe not my favorite round 2 showdown play just because of that. And if he ends up going off for round 2 showdown, I guess it's okay because we have that exposure. But not the best on paper, that's for damn sure. Jesper Svensson could be in for a little bit of negative regression. Got guys like Jacob Bridgman up there. Brian Harmon gained a bunch around the green. He only hit 12 greens today, so he could be in for a little bit of a rough round 2. If we take a look at the negatives, the opposite is true. So just like a few of the other guys could be regressing back to neutral, you get a few of these guys playing better out there for round 2 as well. And while a lot of them blew up today, so it's a lot of guys that are like T120 or T130, 143 like you have here with this Walsh Kelly guy. Guys that were a little bit more competitive that gave up a bunch around the green. Grayson Sigg lost about a stroke in that category. Ryan Gerard, a Justin Lauer, who, by the way, Justin Lauer gained a bunch out there on approach as well. So I kind of like his chances out there for tomorrow. Lost with the putter. He's usually a lot better out there on Bermuda grass. So hint, we'll probably be talking about Justin Lauer here in just a few seconds. But these guys that lost around the green, in a lot of cases, you could probably expect them to regress back to the mean as well. And the best part about some of that regression is that over here on the SHIPIT Nation Stone, we take all of that care for you. So make sure to join the SHIPIT Nation channel. Make sure to join the site if you guys haven't already. This is out there for the main slate. This is the stone out there for round 2 showdown. I believe they're still working on it. When the round is finished up, they'll have the shots gained metrics to go out there and publish the actual round 2 stone. But what you'll want to find on there, and what really makes your process easier out there for Friday, is that they're going to have tabs on here where you can see their chances to go out there and regress back to the mean. It'll have their round 1 approach stats, and then it's going to show their baseline and their chance to get back to that sort of number. If there's a really positive number in their it's approach delta that they have on there, that means that they have a really good chance to go out there and have a better day. If they have a really negative number when it comes to their approach delta, that means they played a lot better than their baseline in round number 1, and that they might come back down to earth a little bit. Apply the same thing out there to putting. If you have a really high putting delta over there for round number 2, that means you have a good chance to have a better putting day. Some of these guys towards the bottom end of the putting list just to go back to that here for a second, the guys that were down there at like -4, -5 shots gained putting, they're going to have massive deltas over there on the SHIPIT Nation Stone. So if you're trying to take advantage of some of that statistical regression, you can do it by hand. It's a little bit cumbersome. It takes you a lot of time, but I know a lot of you out there, right, have shit to do. You have families, obligations outside of just playing DFS, like everyone out there does. This gives you a very good opportunity to save some time, find all that data and make it actionable. And it's my favorite part of using the Stone out there for Showdown. So make sure to check it out if you guys haven't already. If you have any questions about using the Stone, the best part about SHIPIT Nation is that they have videos on how to read the Stone and how to use it out there for Showdown. So on their site, if you go over here to Showdown, then you click on the Stone, it'll give you that over there for Friday. And it'll also have the video on there as well that gives you the information on how to use it. So just great stuff over there on the SHIPIT Nation. I can't say enough nice things. Let's catch up on some of the questions down there in chat, and then we'll build a few lineups together over here on DraftKings to tie it all together. So let me get a sip of this over here and what we're doing. Do I see the greens firming up much? I would say yes over the weekend for sure. A lot of that's going to come down to rain, though. If they get rain overnight, that's going to completely overtake that kind of effect. And based on the forecast that I was looking at yesterday, it looks like there might be some rain overnight. So if it doesn't rain, sure, I think that the winds will dry up the course, but that's the unfortunate byproduct of these storms heading through, is it might just give us some more rain. What do I think about a Siwoo Kim as a bounce back? Was terrible putting. So yeah, he's at the bottom end of that putting list that we were just looking at. Unfortunately, wasn't that great anywhere else. Did gain off the tee, so was able to hit some fairways conceivably. Let's see, hit 9 out of his 14 fairways on the round. Also hit the ball relatively far. That's how he gains 1.5 strokes off the tee. But he lost on approach and then, yeah, lost like the 4 strokes putting. Could he conceivably come back? For sure. I mean, Siwoo Kim's one of the best players that we have in this field. And +1 score, it really isn't the worst round. It's not a complete death sentence either. And towards the end of his day, he fought back a little bit. He was +2 early, ended up making a birdie at the turn, and then gave back another one on the tough 13th. But the last hole, he made a bunch of pars to finish his round, which was, Siwoo Kim, a lot of times he'll just pack it up and give up. He did not do that over there for round 1. And then he finished off with a birdie. So I think that he could be in a decent headspace for round 2 Showdown. That's usually my main concern with Siwoo Kim is, making sure that he actually cares about tomorrow's round. And I'd say at +1, he's close enough to the cut to go out there and give a damn for Friday. And the shots gained metrics, they're not pretty, but it's round 1 Showdown. It's only a 1-round sample size. We don't want to overreact out there to just 18 holes. So yeah, I would keep him in play. He's maybe not the safest guy that you could get to, but he's going to be relatively low owned because of how he played. And, can't be anything like this +1, right? I mean, he played about as poorly as he possibly could and only shot +1. You'd have to think that he's got a bounce back in him, or at least a chance at it. All right, let's go through some lineup construction stuff. So over here, we're just going to talk about what I'm thinking about when building lineups, which is mostly worrying about my leverage. When we don't have a massive weather edge to worry about, lineup construction gets a little bit more free. And really the main thing that we're focusing on when going through our 5-6 players is going to be making sure that we have enough leverage towards the rest of the field, that we can move up in those GPPs if our guys end up being optimal plays. And we also want to make sure that we're not duplicating ourselves with other lineups. So the real key way to do that is to make sure you have 2-3 pivots in your lineup. And on a slate like this, where we don't have a weather edge, it's not round 4 Showdown, where we don't have to prioritize placement points and a little bit more chalk than what we want. This is the kind of slate where 2-3 pivots is probably the bare minimum of what you want, because you've had the round 1 under the belt. There's going to be a lot of overreactions to what we saw today. You should be taking shots on players that are average to low ownership and at least probably half of your lineup. So I like to start with those 2-3 players before I round it off with my last 2 or 3, just to go out there and get my differentiation out of the way before we build the rest of our lineup. So I'm just going to throw in a few low-owned core plays that I was thinking about for this week. So this is where we can also go through a few guys that I was thinking about for tomorrow. And let's go back to the shots gained metrics. I do want to show you guys a few guys that maybe will go off. Let's go to the shots gained ball striking and go through this list again. So if we're looking for spend ups, Hoagie Straka look pretty good with their ball striking stats, but if we're looking to get different, that's not going to accomplish it. I mentioned before that guys like Hoagie Straka are probably going to be 5 to 8% higher owned than what they otherwise would be, and they were already getting some ownership this week. So you're looking at 15 to 20% most likely on those top two guys. If you're looking to get a little bit different, we're going to have to be more outside the box, and I think Justin Lauer would be a perfect example of that. If we take a look at his price, let's bring it up here over here on DraftKings. He's going to be $6,800 over there for round 2 showdown. And what you're getting in this sort of player is somebody that should regress positively here in round 2 showdown, and should conceivably get even better than what he did for today. So he lost a bunch around the green. He lost strokes with a putter. If anything, Justin Lauer, and to bring up his stat profile here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. He's I don't want to say an elite tier putter, but he's the kind of guy who usually gains out there on the greens. So he didn't at the RSM. He didn't round 1 as you just saw, but you can see with this record here that it's a lot of green. If anything, slightly into the green, they can see with these events like the Sanderson Farms, Wyndham, or John Deere. But yeah, he lost at the RSM. He lost at the Shriners, but it's a whole lot of green the whole way back to the US Open, back towards the middle of summer. So he did have a little 3-event stretch where it was into the negative, but a lot of positive and a lot of dark green that we see here for Justin Lauer. So out there round number 1, didn't have it with the short game. Even if we take a look at the around the green stats, like he's usually decent around the green as well. He does have events where he loses with the short game, like RSM Classic was one, also at the Shriners, which kind of crazy that he loses with the short game. And it seems like it's both categories in the same week. Out there with his shots gain metrics, but he's typically a lot better in those two categories. If he can continue to ball strike it like he did for round 1, where he gained 3 strokes in the category, I love his chances to go out there and shoot something low. So let's throw a Justin Lauer in here to get a little bit of differentiation. And just to go down this list, let's find one more sneaky play. And by sneaky play, we're looking for like a mid to lower tier player that is probably 5% owned at the very much. And just to give you the ownership number on somebody like Lauer, it's probably going to be like 5%, maybe even lower out there in my projections. And to find the next man in, we could go with Ben Coles, but he did gain some strokes putting, so maybe we stay away from him. Somebody that's due for a little bit more regression could perhaps be Sam Stevens. Now, I think he's a little bit more pricey, but he's like, what, 7K? $6,900. Yeah, I was pretty close out there at the price. So we took Sam Stevens there at $6,900. That puts us at $9K remaining out there per player. And we've got 2 guys here that should be sub 5% owned. And by the way, the reason why I like a Sam Stevens, just to show you the stats, he did lose off the tee, which was mostly the byproduct of one really bad drive, but he gains nearly 4 strokes on approach. He's one of the best players that we have in the field. And then he lost over 2 strokes with the putter. And if we just sort this by approach, what ranking was he? He was number 3 in the field when it came to his shots gained approach. Sepp might end up passing him out there by the end of the round, but Sam Stevens, if he didn't lose those 2 strokes off the tee and the 2 strokes putting, that's a -5 round right there. And usually Stevens is a much better driver than what you saw for today. He's both accurate and relatively long off the tee, and the putter can be a little bit inconsistent. He's if we bring up his profile real quickly, you'll quickly see what I'm talking about. Like, he has weeks where he loses 3 strokes putting, but look at this, right? He gained in 5 straight events here from the Zozo Championship back to the 3M Open. He had an event where he gained over 5 strokes putting at the Sanderson Farms, which, by the way, was on Bermuda grass greens, which is the same type of grass that we're playing on this week. Rocket Mortgage gained 5 strokes putting. Myrtle Beach Classic, another Bermuda grass course, by the way. He gained nearly 4.5 strokes putting at that sort of event. The Stevens could conceivably turn it around as well. So let's throw those 2 into the lineup. Those are, I guess, 2 of the pivots that we're taking out there. And let's find one more pivot towards the top. And I guess we were talking about Siwoo. Potentially, he could be somebody we throw in here. At $8,900, he's going to be about 10, maybe 12% owned at the very most, I would imagine. Maybe even lower out there in my projections. $8,900. He's also not too expensive. Like, he was in the 9K range heading into the week, priced down a little bit because of his shaky start to the week. And here we have 3 guys who all played decently round 1. And again, it doesn't have to be these 3 for you, right? These are just examples of me showing you decent showdown plays. There are a bunch of decent showdown plays that you guys can look at out there for tomorrow. But the idea is we found 3 players that check the boxes that at least I'm looking for, right, in my shots gained process over there for Friday, that are also relatively low owned. Sub 5% on the top 2, sub 15% are over there with Siwoo Kim. So pretty much no matter whoever we finish this lineup off with, I mean, it could be the chalk of the chalk for our last 2-3 spots here, we're going to be totally fine out there in the large field GPPs. And you're especially going to be fine over there in single entries. If this was for a 200 to a 500 entry single entry, you'd have no issues whatsoever, unless it's, your buddy that's looking over your shoulder and stealing your lineup, or somebody going out there and just copying the plays that I talk on here in the live stream. You're going to have a really good chance of not going out there and duplicating. So to give you an idea, for example, if you wanted to play a Corey Connors and hope for a bounce back, even if you wanted to go to Hideki at 11 grand, who, by the way, he doesn't have the best stat profile heading into tomorrow, but he's got a decent one if I go out there and show you guys it. So Hideki, you can see gained 2 strokes on approach, lost a little off the tee, but was about neutral out there in the 2 short game categories. I mean, if he gets back to gaining a bunch of strokes on the greens like he did last week, that goes from -3 to like a -6, a -7 round. So let's throw him in there, out there into this kind of lineup. And let's take another relatively chalky guy up here towards the top. I guess like a Straka. We go with a Hoagie if we wanted to. Let's take Straka. So Straka is an AM wave player. He also had the really good day out there with his approach play. So that's really why I think Straka is going to get some ownership for tomorrow. But if you can afford to take that kind of player, if you're taking those 2-3 pivots that we started with. So that's kind of the power of going out there and taking some low-owned players, is that you could take somebody like Straka, who looks like such a good play on paper, but that might be a little bit more popular than what you were hoping for. Our last man in here, we have 8,200 remaining. I would probably consider leaving some salary on the table. So guys like Mackenzie Hughes, Chris Kirk, even a Tom Hoagie at $7,800 might be in play as a last man in. Hoagie would probably be the highest owned out of all those players there because he's starting at -6. Even a Cam Davis at -4 is probably going to be getting some attention himself. So Hoagie's probably around 20%. Probably have a Cam Davis at 10 to 15%. If I was entering a large field GPP and I had Hideki and Straka in the lineup, I'm probably not using a Tom Hoagie or a Cam Davis. But if I was playing in a single entry, only against a couple hundred other entries, I would probably be using a Tom Hoagie or a Cam Davis. And considering the shots gained metrics, you probably guess which one of the two that I would go with. So it's in single entries, you just can be a little bit more lackadaisical about the ownership. You don't have to beat nearly as many other entries, which means that you need a little bit less leverage. Doesn't mean that you need no leverage, right? That's why we still have those pivots up there towards the top. But you have a much lower chance of duplicating when you're only entering against a couple hundred other people. And then you also only have to beat those couple hundred people as opposed to a couple thousand or sometimes 20 to 50,000 like we have out there for main slate. So those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about. If I was entering the large field GPP, it's probably guys like the Kirk and Hughes that would have been rounding that off with. So hopefully it gives you guys an idea of how to go out there and build for round 2 showdown without a huge weather edge. I think it's mostly game theory that you want to harp on. We could talk about the shots gained metrics, trying to find guys that are due for regression all we want. I think that's helpful. It's a good way to build your player pool, but really where you're going to win and lose and generate EV out there for your round 2 lineups is making sure that you have enough leverage. Making sure that you're not duplicating yourself out there in those large field GPPs is far more important than really who you're using out there for tomorrow. So just make sure you're following those DFS fundamentals. Make sure that you're going out there and building lineups that can long-term be profitable. If you're entering a bunch of duplicates with other people, that's not a sustainable, long-term profitable strategy. You need to be making sure that you're unique out there in those sort of contests, and you need to make sure that you have the leverage to pay off when you get things right. So that's what I'll say about it. Let me catch up on any specific questions if there are any, and if not, we're going to hop on out of here. Thanks, Luke. Apologize if I already said it, but I think what do I think the cut will be? So I didn't go over that, Anthony, but let me take a look at what Data Golf thinks. So I haven't really thought about it quite yet. So I usually like to start with their guess and try and extrapolate it from there. So they've got it at -3, -2, -3 is, I guess, 30%, 40% favored over there at -2. Currently, the cut is -1, but it is about to get to -2. I would say it's probably -3. So like they have it at -2 still, but it's literally about to move to -2 as we speak over here on the live scoring. So I would have to imagine that the scoring tomorrow is not going to be over par. Like I know it's 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, but it's not going to go from like a -1 scoring average to something like over par. I would imagine closer to 0.75 under par is where I would put the scoring average. So if I had to guess, I'd put it at -3. Maybe even -4 if scoring's better than we think. If the scoring average is another 1.5 under par day, then -4 is in play. So just to be safe about it, we'll go with -3. That's pretty much where Data Golf thinks it's going to be. But yeah, this -2 at 41%, like I disagree with. Like I know the -2 is T43, so that's 25 golfers that have got to pass that kind of spot. But this isn't a difficult golf course. This, it's not a resort style course, but it's also not one of the harder ones that we have out there on tour. So -3 is my guess. Berger and Whaley, good bounce backs. So I don't even know if I'd call Berger a bounce back, right? Didn't Berger have a pretty good day? I thought Berger shot like -1 or something like that. So yeah, -1, gained off the tee and gained on approach. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd call him a bounce back. I just think he's a good play out there for tomorrow. He shot about an average round out there for the field. So he's not going to be chalky. He's probably going to be lower owned than what he was for main slate. So I just think he's a good showdown play. Not sure I'd call him a bounce back though, right? And then you said Whaley. Let me check on him. I have no idea what Whaley did today. So Whaley also shot -1. He's going to be super low owned because he had no ownership heading into the week, and then shoots a very, mediocre, nondescript -1, kind of like Berger. It's going to take some eyes off of you out there for Friday. He doesn't have as good as shots gained metrics though, right? He was about neutral across the board. So it's not a terrible set of shots gained metrics, but also not the most sustainable. I'd say, Berger over Whaley if you're looking for a bounce back. And then you said thoughts on a player pool size for 20 max. So if you're going 20 max, I don't play a lot of 20 maxes. So I have to kind of go for my 150 max exposure and work backwards. My 150 max pool is going to be 30 to 35 players, probably closer to 30, I would say, in my 150 lineups. So if you're playing 20, and I usually like to play tighter, especially if I'm only going with like 20 lineups, I'd probably have 12 to 15 players. That sounds about right. It's not something that I do all that often. I don't play a lot of 20 maxes these days. It's a lot of single entries. It's a lot of cash, and then my 150 max exposure is where I put a majority of my money in. But yeah, probably like 15 players be around the sweet spot, I would say. I play pretty tight, and the way that I do it is I play really tight up top. So if I'm only playing 20 lineups, I probably only have from 8K plus like 4, maybe 5 guys in my player pool. 6 if I really want to push it, I guess, up there towards the top. And then from 8K and below is where my last 9 or 10 guys are out there in my player pool. So hopefully that helps. I would say pick your guys up top, and then you can scatter shot a little bit more towards the bottom. Appreciate that. Jay Steele says, thank you for the great stuff. And yeah, that's all we've got out there for the round 2 stream. Going to go ahead and hop on out of here. I've got to do some projections over there for my people. But as I said before, make sure to use code Luke10 if you guys are signing up for SHIPIT Nation for a discount off any membership over there as well. And for the betting and prop preview over here for round 2, make sure to stop on by for my YouTube channel as well. Over there to be either later tonight or tomorrow morning. I have not decided quite yet. It's pretty late for us East Coasters over here, so I've still got to make that decision. But for the round 2 prop live stream, make sure to check it out over there on my channel. For the announcement on when that'll be live, make sure to check out my Twitter/X. That is GSLukeDFS. You can follow my Twitter at that kind of handle and get all the information out there throughout the rest of the week. Rounds 3 and 4, we'll have the showdown streams over here on the SHIPIT Nation YouTube, and same things over there for the prop and betting streams for rounds 3 and 4. Those will be on my stream after we end up going live over here on SHIPIT. So best of luck over there for all of your exposure tomorrow. Hopefully I see a lot of you guys towards the top end of those GPPs, some SHIPIT Nation flags up there, the people down from the live chat towards the top of those contests, and we go out there, make Friday a good one for all of our exposure. Here we go.